Away we go, Bob Harvey, another edition of the Landscape and Garden Show with that guy. Yep, that's Bob Harvey. And yours truly, Brian Turner. You can call him Bob. You can call me BT. Are you getting nothing in your headphones there?
I can't.
No, let me turn that up for you.
I've gotten really good at lip reading.
All right, how's that?
That's better.
Better?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
You know, we make this show up as we go, and that's what it is. It's an hour-long conversation on the landscape and garden side of your world with outstanding special guests along the way. Did you notice the superlative that I've already attached to you, Scott Erickson? Outstanding and special in the same breath. Good to have you here, Scott.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
As Scott walked into the Alive and Social Network offices and funky old Southside studio house here today, I said, if this were one of those sort of punked landscape and garden shows, I'd affect sort of a Bill Murray-esque Carl, the landscaper voice, the greenskeeper voice, and I'd say something like, oh yeah, good to have you here, and geez, I loved your run with the Minnesota Twins. That was awesome. And I'm just curious, how do you go from pitching and coaching to outdoor landscape lighting? And answer me now. But it's not one of those punk shows. And that was that wasn't a bad Carl. That was my version of a Carl.
That was pretty good.
That was more my bar version, when you're hanging around having a couple of cold ones with the boys, Mm-hmm. So I got that going for me. You know the line, which ain't bad. Good to have you here, man. I got to throw some props out to Scott right out of the chute here because I went to his website, of course, as we're doing our homework and learning a little bit more about you, Scott, ericksonlighting.com. And as outstanding a lighting artist as you are equally adept as a photographer. You took, I know you mentioned again before the show, so I'll bring it up now, that you got somebody that needs to do a little bit more of that side of things for you because you're probably pretty busy doing the lighting.
Yep.
But I'm guessing most of the shots that I saw there were your work, and you, my friend, I mean, they're just awesome. The photography was fantastic. I loved it. It was great.
Over the last 15, 16 years, I started taking, basically just after seeing all the projects that we do and different lighting angles, it's fun to go on at night and start taking pictures of them. Then you put it all together. And just in the last year, I've had somebody else help me with photography. But otherwise, I'm really particular myself on different angles and shots. And
you know what you want to see.
Yeah,
you're right. You know what you want to showcase in your work.
Yeah.
So
and I had a really good camera on a tripod and. You've learned that right before dusk takes better pictures than pitch black because then you get the skyline and some contrast through the trees and rough peaks and
you get a little more shadow. You get
sure.
a little more of some color tones perhaps in the sky with that dusky or that gloaming sky, whatever the case may be. Yeah. Anyhow, I wanted to throw that out to you because obviously what you do is deal in light, and obviously that's the world of photography is the art of light as much as composition and such. But, those skills, come into play with what you do too. Yeah, so it really is, I imagine, sort of a hand-in-glove thing for you. So pretty cool stuff. Good to have you here, man. And again, I'm still trying to figure out how the pitching career turned into outdoor lighting. But, we'll get that all hammered out as we go. Bob Harvey, what's on your mind there, man? What's blooming? I mean, that's one of our regular segments on the Landscape and Garden Show. What do you got? What do you got going through your head?
It's good to give a weekly update. One of the benefits of observing this on a weekly basis in a setting like this is that you see that some plant material, shrubs or perennials, have a longer bloom time than others. And that's also determined by the conditions. So today it's raining. And we had some rain over the weekend, and things are really starting to lush up. And
aren't they, though?
And it's exciting. We've been in a deficit, and some of the rain came right through the center of the metro this morning that really helped us get caught up with some of our deficit. And it's also allowing the plants that have been blooming, some we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks that are still blooming, to continue their bloom season. So we're going on 3 to 4 weeks with some of these plants, which is wonderful. I mentioned this at the last several podcasts, but we are still seeing huge displays of tulips based on our design that we implemented with early, mid, and late stage blooming tulips, and with our natural approach to protecting them against grazing from different
from the
animals
critters.
From the critters. We have been very, very fortunate to be able to enjoy them. I was just sitting on my front porch last night. I live in Linden Hills. I have a beautiful front porch that we designed and put on the house. And we're going to have one of our podcasts over there, aren't we?
I'm glad you brought that up,
yes,
because that's a discussion that
we're going to be able to create a little bit of Mayberry RFD kind of experience there. It's really a fun place.
That's a great neighborhood.
It is, and it's a great setting, and we're right at a T intersection, and we get to know all the neighbors and people that come and go throughout.
I think you might remember my family's got a pretty sizable history in that neighborhood. Not that we lived there, but my wife worked for the longest time at Creative Kid Stuff, whose offices are right above that store in Linden Hills. And we lived generally in that neighborhood, a mile here, a mile there away. So we frequented there a lot, obviously because of Mama's work. The kids, at that time when she was there, they were like, 3 and 6 or 2 and 5.
And across the driveway from Sebastian Joe's, and across the street from the Great Harvest Bakery.
Oh, my goodness. Exactly.
It goes
the bakery,
on and on.
And now they're turning it into a restaurant and other good stuff. But Bayer's Hardware was there, so Dad needed to get a little hardware action. See, I'm going into that voice again there. I need to go in and get something there.
Something.
We'll drive into town on the weekends and just to go for a bike ride and go right around the lake and go for a walk into town there and grab
I'll
coffee.
show you where today you'll get to see where you'll be stopping the next time you come in.
Now my buddy Stephen Brown's got his, it's been there for a while with Tilia. He's got that fabulous restaurant, one of the best restaurants in the Twin Cities. Of course, Wild Rumpus is still there. Anyhow, that will be like a little slice of Minneapolis Mayberry when we do the show there.
I must still have 100 or more tulips blooming in the front yard that have been going since the second week of April when they started. So we're looking at a month. And you get 4+ weeks out of just that one plant, and then you couple it with other things. You really can. The art and science have to work together, and we'll find that out today when we talk with Scott about the lighting component, how that fits in with our design, because it's art and science. Understanding what to anticipate. It's always anticipating so that you know how to respond to certain conditions and certain opportunities or challenges that may come your way.
That's a continual takeaway from the landscape and garden show here, is that look around the corner as to what's around the next week, the next month, the next year, the next years ahead. That's a continual lesson that Bob's trying to put out here. And let's just use the tulip thing as an example. We'd love you to hire Edelweiss Design to come out and give you a hand on your project, no matter what it is. But as a takeaway, even on a smaller scale, if you're going to plant a tulip bed, then do your research, do your homework, and choose those tulips that you'll have a cluster that'll start early. You'll have a cluster that'll be in the middle, and a late blooming cluster, so that in that bed you will get just a nice cascade of color and a nice cascade of flowering texture for a much longer period than if it was just a single tulip monoculture there.
Well, the other thing too is seeing how we're talking about individual groupings of just one plant variety right now in the tulip category, but it's really how all that fits into the big picture.
Doing the cascade thing that way.
Right,
too.
and so how those things are progressing together. And so what we still have blooming right now, or some things coming on, is the viburnum snowball bush that everybody mistakes for hydrangea bush or shrub, is in full bloom right now.
Okay, what's the difference? Because I'm sure I get those mixed up.
Well, they just look like extra large golf balls or softballs, that have the texture, of a hydrangea, and they're lime green, and they're blooming right now in full bloom, and they overlap with the lilacs a little bit, depending on types of lilacs, because we have our whole lilac category. And then we have the thing that I want to spend a little bit more time on today is if you're really noticing those bright pink shrubs, or those bright orange or yellow shrubs that smell so good. What are they? They're azaleas. And we think, azaleas? I don't live in South Carolina. Well, as far back as 1957, the Arboretum was doing their research on how to create bud hardy azaleas here in Minnesota.
For the northern climate.
And that means, a shrub, a woody shrub that adds growth every year and leaves stems behind, and so it can increase shrubs, small trees, whatever. There's different components to that. You have the root system, you have the stems and the branches, and then you have the buds. And the buds, in this case, are producing flowers. So we've had instances where a shrub will survive our climate in terms of root system and maybe even in terms of stems of growth that's added on year after year after year, woody shrubs. But when you get to the buds that produce the flowers, our temperatures can be too severe for some of those categories. And that's been the case with things like azaleas and rhododendrons. That's just one category. There's many, many other things. Forsythia comes to mind. So over the years, research has been able to come up with these other cultivars that come off of these original stocks, and they look for the strongest producers through time and research and propagation and harvesting and all that kind of thing. And fortunately, there were some dedicated people out at the Arboretum that since 1957 have been able to give us what we call the Northern Lights series azaleas.
Nice.
And you can see when they're blooming right now and they're fragrant. I was just at a garden gathering on Sunday night over in Mendota Heights, and in the front of the house, because 15 years ago I designed this landscape.
Cool.
A very good friend of mine who's also a real hobbyist gardener and has a passion for it. He's a chemist, but this is how he enjoys his spare time. And the Northern Lights azaleas, called the white lights, were in bloom in the front of the house, and in the back were the bright pink rosy light ones, like shocking lipstick pink. You go, that just can't be real. It's got to be something out of,
Hairspray. John Waters hairspray.
Exactly.
It was unnatural color.
Spray painted.
Yeah.
I know it. So anyway, in combination with the other emerging landscape, they're just absolutely outstanding. And
Cool.
they have some site requirements. They like well-drained soil. They like a fair amount of consistent moisture, but they do not like to sit in it. And they really do like a fair amount of sun. So they're very twiggy and open, but when they bloom, you forget about all that.
Yeah,
the rest of the
just
year,
gorgeous. Wow.
It's a little bit of a challenge what you do with them. So you have other things in the design process that compensate for that naked look after they're finished blooming.
Give us a little insight with your chemist friend, because he's a hobbyist gardener and likes to get his fingers.
Paul, my good friend Paul.
So on the design side of things, and you always do your homework with the client and find out, what are you going to do, how are you going to contribute or not. And with Paul, he wanted to contribute, that much more. So what kind of things were factored in to take Paul's groove into account? What you knew would be a multi-year, every year thing for Paul.
Very good question. A very good example, because they lived across from St. Thomas University on Cretin Avenue for many, many years as newlyweds. His wife and my wife were roommates, and that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
And we got to do the music at their wedding. They became dear friends, and we get together all the time. And they were building a brand new home over in Mendota Heights, and a very different setting from the very traditional in-town, vintage kind of home. So they did somewhat of a traditional kind of home setting as well, but it's on a cul-de-sac and it's in a suburb and a lot more space to landscape. So he's like, I want to fill this up, and I want to do it with a real sense of mission in terms of how the landscape will best serve me. And so we went through the design process and came up with all the likes, all the dislikes. What are your priorities? Well, I want a place for raspberries. I want a lilac hedge. Then his wife wanted, definitely a place for roses to survive. And then maybe a water feature. And we're dealing with the site issues of drainage and soil composition, circulation, places where he can do a lot of seasonal gardening, where all the productive kind of gardens, vegetables, and those kinds of things can be done. And then a place for him to experiment, because he has a lot of things going on inside where he can generate seeds. He does propagation.
Well, he's a scientist, so his head would go in that direction.
Yes, and he's like, I can make all this stuff. I need your vision, and I will implement it.
For some reason, I'm seeing Paul out in the garden in a lab coat, but I like that image.
Well, Paul's going to come on the show. He doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to have him on, because he would love this.
That sounds good. I like that idea a lot.
So anyway, to see it 15 years later, where the trees are 18 inches in diameter now. We have tall pines and aspens growing, beautiful sugar maples, smoke bushes that are 12 feet high, a beautiful blue beech in the center of the yard that we're going to it's it's on a slope. We're going to actually this summer install a water feature underneath a little pond.
Underneath, near that tree?
Yes.
Oh, that's one of my favorite trees,
it.
too. My God,
and
that's
it's
a
just
beautiful
beautiful.
tree.
It's just splayed out in this beautiful big round canopy. And he has boxwoods in the front of his house that are 5 feet tall and no winter burn. They're just on the right location, the right soil condition. Rhododendrons that are 5 to 6 feet tall, very lush. Tried and true. He tries different things. So he pays attention to his landscape and listens and watches and observes what's working, what's not working. Then we can dialogue about it. I can't be there every day. But when his response is, Bob, what do you think's going on here? I can say, let's try this.
Yeah.
Maybe, if you just move those away from the corner, they won't get the winter wind, or just something with those kinds of details. And so that has been a project that has served very well. There's some things that are ready for renewal. We had some storm damage and some blight that hit certain things, but
that's going to happen in any garden.
And that's
no matter what
that's
you
the
do.
moving target. Like I said, it's not like doing your living room where everything just sits stagnant for years on end. So outside, everything's a moving target. So other things that are blooming is a big peony season coming on now, and some of the earliest peonies are already open or opening. We have many categories of peonies that I like. There's the Japanese peony, which has been in bloom. And those are the Itoha, I-T-O-H peonies. They're kind of a shrub, woody shrub, so they get bigger year after year. People think of peonies as blooming, and then they die back to the ground in the fall, and you cut them off, and then they come up again. Well, not with the Itoha varieties of peonies.
I don't think I've ever seen those, Bob. That sounds
well,
great. That's
they
pretty
carry
cool.
a hefty price tag with them.
I-T-O-H, Itoha?
I'm used to seeing the peonies that they look incredible for 1 week, and then you cut them down the rest of the year. They're like, what are those?
And if you don't
or
get
the rain gets them.
If you don't get your your big hoop around it, your metal hoop,
Right.
then they're splayed all over the
So they're
place.
beautiful for like 1 week, unless it rains the second day, and then you get 2 days.
Exactly.
Then they're pounded. Hey, look at all those beautiful petals on the ground. Yeah.
Well, we have those, and then we have the lactiflora peonies, which are kind of a semi-double to single peony. And for those of us out there that love the look of peony and maybe the scent, that don't want to have to stake them and deal with all the extra petals and they fall over and the stems break, these have sturdy stems and they stand up straight, even without staking, because they don't have all that extra weight that catches the rain, and then they bend over
down,
and then they fall. And so there's a couple I really like: Red Charm, Sword Dance. Let's see, white. There's a white one that I really like. What's it called? Something. I'll think of it. Then you have the traditional with the really heavily petaled ones that do require the maintenance, but they tend to be the most fragrant most of the time. So
I love cutting those and getting those in the house. Boy, those are just great.
So there's a lot of this other single one that's really a hot magenta pink. I think of that color at this time of the year when I think of those azaleas, is the Paula Fay peony. Gorgeous, vivid pink semi-double flowers, strong stems, very neat habit, and it's an early season bloomer, which means they're already starting to open as we speak. And Yummy, Y-U-M-I, is an example of the Itoha peony, which is the yellow one. It's large double yellow flowers that grow on strong stems in dark green compact mound. And over time, it will build up like a shrub. It'll add on height and expand.
But you don't cut those back. You just let those. No, of course not. You just let those.
It's like cutting off your fingers.
Yeah.
You just don't want to cut off something that continues to grow.
But again, Bob, I-T-O-H?
I-T-O-H.
Okay, Ito. Okay.
Ito.
Okay, that's cool. God, I got to.
So,
Now I'm gonna Google that and take a look at some of those images.
They're huge.
Maybe I've seen them.
They
it's
look
not.
like
it's not making a thing to me.
They're the diameter of a big soup bowl.
Okay.
I mean, they're just huge.
Well, sound just lovely. And again, hardy for us here in Minnesota.
Very.
Obviously.
Yep, they are hardy. And
when you say a little spendy, maybe that's why I haven't seen them in my
well, you better have
basement
50
style
to 100
of buying.
bucks
Okay.
Yeah, 50 to 100 bucks to spend on one specimen, depending on the size.
Find the right spot and make the investment. Okay.
Euphorbia, which is spurge, most people know as a common name, is that bright yellowy, greeny succulent kind of perennial that comes up in rock gardens and in the border that overlaps with a lot of the earlier springing things like columbine and tulips and bleeding hearts. Wonderful, wonderful foliage filler, where the color is in the bracts. The flowers are so tiny, but it's the leaves themselves, called bracts, at the top of the plant that provide so much color. And then Trollius, which is a woodland plant. If you're thinking woodland areas and you want to get something going in the woodland areas, it's called Trollius, Trollius, or globe flower. When the flower opens, it's shaped like a little globe, a little ball, and it opens up yellow or an orange color. Our snowdrop anemones, Anemone sylvestris, continue to bloom. It's been 4 weeks that they have been blooming, and depending on the different settings. If it's real deep shade, they're started later and they're going to finish a little later, but they might not be as dense.
Is this added rain that we got this week going to help those continue on a little bit, or is that not a factor?
So.
Okay.
I think so. And then they spread really well. So where you're looking for some coverage of larger areas, a drift of these white snowdrop anemones are absolutely fantastic. We're starting to see signs of dianthus opening up, which is that pinks or the carnation family, which has a wonderful spicy fragrance and are good in rock gardens and borders of the garden. But there are some tall varieties get up to 2.5 feet that are a little more unusual. And then I just want to mention some maintenance. Now that we've been through the major part of the lilac season, where our old-fashioned lilacs are finished up or there's very little left, it's time. June is a time to prune on those. And so we have some later blooming lilacs that are open right now, the Mayuri family, which would be your Korean lilac, dwarf Koreans, and Tinkerbell, which is the pink variety, and the Canadian, French Canada lilacs that are still blooming. So we don't do anything with them yet.
But my Miss Kim, which is blooming now, June comes around when those blossoms fall. Then I can do that pruning job that we've talked about.
Get in there and thin it out and shear it, and you work on the inside and the outside.
I want to get to that globe shape, that more rounded shape, rather than the gangly arms that I got going right now.
Now the gangly arms, the branches of the forsythia. So if you have forsythia, it's a great time now to start pruning the forsythias back and planting our brains out. I mean, planting till we can't see straight. So lots of container planting. The vegetables, the more tender vegetables now are going in, the tomatoes and all the, the peppers and all the different things, the herbs, all that stuff, basil, all those things are going in, as well as the colorful things like, the garden centers are loaded with tropicals right now. Mandevilla vines are probably one of the hottest things going, that deep red or the bright white or even yellow, bright pink. And if we get into a dry, hot situation this summer, those will still perform very well.
God, I just love putting those temporary tropicals in like we talked about.
Yes, and if you want something a little more delicate that gives you a lot of benefit fragrance-wise, is the jasmines. And you don't have to get a great big one. You get one of the smaller ones, and they will grow if you take good care of them, keep them moist. So it's fun recreating the palette and the painting in the landscape when, some of our projects are 70-30. 70% perennial, 30% annual. We'll go in and add that pop of color just to tie things together.
And then add a little bit more in the fall for that pop then.
Right. And if we're dealing with someone who likes a lot more to cut and wants more cycling of blooms, we'll go a little heavier on the annuals.
Okay.
But a complete perennial garden also serves well. You're limited in some ways in terms of selection, but you still can get a lot out of that. We figure our philosophy centers around give them as much as they not want, but give them more than what they were expecting.
Sure.
Because the season is so short. And so right now it's crazy getting as much done as because we're planting annuals and perennials at the same time. And we're cycling with them. So there'll be some things that will get planted again. A good example would be delphiniums. We have delphiniums coming back from last year. They're going to bloom earlier in the season, but we're putting another generation in amongst those. So they'll come up mid to late season and produce another wave of flowers. So there's all science and art.
Yeah, and making it all mixed together. And
Yep.
again, always looking downstream, always thinking about what's happening around the corner, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year, or the years, plural, when it comes to that landscape and that landscape planning, that planting pattern.
And I have some of my clients are very, like I mentioned, my friend Paul, some of my clients are very interactive. They want to be a part of the process because to them the process is as much of important an experience as just seeing the end product.
Sure, absolutely.
And then others, and that works great with us too, where they are just
You, Bob, you
wanting
take
us
it over.
take the palette, take the painting, create it. We will enjoy it.
I want you to call this Scott Erickson guy. You do the hardscape and the plants. Erickson's coming in to do the lighting, and you guys take it over and go. Scott, is that a big part of the groove for you? Is it more of a take it over and make it pretty, or do a lot of folks see with that photographic eye like you, a lot of clients, and so they want to contribute to what the look of that outdoor lighting will be in their landscape?
I typically hold their hand and
kind of
hope
guide them
they
through
trust
it.
me.
Yeah, okay.
As far as put it together.
Yeah,
And,
I kind of
and be
figured
like,
it was going to be that side rather than the other one.
So I
Yeah.
visualize it and try to get them to see what I see, and I walk through and kind of explain how it's going to look in layers and try to layer things in there so you get some foreground, midground, background, get some different lighting intensities. Try to mix it up so it looks interesting
Yeah.
and not just lighting a tree or a bunch of path lights. Or
Yeah, but like Bob with clients, you have to do some homework for sure to find out, okay, traffic patterns, where do they like to go? If they've got a thing, a living space here and a living space there, that path is going to need more light than it otherwise might have, in the garden space and things like that, just using that as an example.
There's different ways to light that path.
And then,
For
they
sure.
can light it differently, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it isn't that obvious. And like you said, ask the customers and go through a bunch of questions as far as what they're really looking to get out of it, what they're anticipating it to be. And sometimes it's what I think it might be important isn't. Oh, they don't use that area, or their viewing is out of a different side of the house. So you can go into the house and you can look out the rooms. Maybe there's a window in the kitchen that views a part of the yard that you don't really see from the road or from the backyard, or
Sure.
whether it's from the lake or something. And so kind of go indoors and outdoors and just walk the property and kind of put together the best overall system, I guess.
And then, like you said, sort of guide them through
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and let them see what's inside your head, which is more of a storytelling job at that point.
Yeah.
A visual storytelling job.
And people are like, if they have a hard time seeing it, I just say, if I recommend anything and you don't like it, or if there's, just as a peace of mind, I'm like, just if I put it in and you question it, and you're like, gosh, it just isn't how you explained it, or it's too bright, or it's not bright enough, or I think it should be a different tree. No question about it. We'll move it and make it right.
Yeah.
But I have yet to have someone come back and and really say that.
Dig
Usually
in like
it's
that.
add more. It's
Yeah.
like, you're right. That tree does look good.
Can you do the other one like that?
Yeah. And lighting's it's addictive. And I was just at a great landscape today, and it was a lady that bought her house in 1956, and they planted. It was a cornfield in Plymouth, and Plymouth is far from a cornfield these days. There's houses everywhere.
What general vicinity in Plymouth? Because my dad grew up in Plymouth, so now you got me curious.
Zachary Lane, north of Medicine Lake.
Oh, yeah. I live in that area. I'm in New Hope, but yeah, I'm general area where I'm at and where my
So-
dad grew up. Mhm.
So this old Rambler house, and she has a backyard that people, basically it's almost like something you'd see walking into one of Bob's shops. Like, she really knows her stuff, and she has planted everything in her backyard. That's her full-time job is maintaining her backyard. She has a pond, and she has little grass walkways and just layers and layers of plants and annuals and perennials, and it is beautiful. When I pulled up the driveway, I'm like, one of these calls. And then I got to the backyard, and it was breathtaking.
And then
So-
suddenly the Hallelujah chorus is ringing in your ears.
Well,
and
and
that
then
sort of.
and she explained that she wouldn't be able to, she didn't have the budget of a lot of people, but yet I said, well, let's do it in layers. Let's light what's important today.
Yeah, okay.
And she had the solar lights out there, which let's get rid of those.
Yard sale.
Yards, yeah. So we starting out with a dozen lights in the backyard, and she was worried that it was going to be too much, and I said, I promise I'll be back next year to add more, because once you start seeing it, you'll
Yeah.
see other areas. And without overlighting, I definitely don't overlight. I'm not a fixture salesman. I like it's
The right amount.
it's tasteful, and if you get different lighting intensities, and some plants are better lit from different angles, and not everything needs to be front lit. You can backlight stuff and cross light it, and different filters will give you different colors, and it is fun to just to see a variety of lighting effects.
This isn't lost on me. You're speaking completely like a theatrical lighter, lighting designer would speak. Someone who works inside the theater world. Has that ever happened for you? I mean, have you crossed paths or done any of that kind of work? Because everything you're saying here, all of the language and verbiage, everything is just like a theatrical lighting designer would talk.
No, I'm not.
Any aspirations that way? I think it'd be kind of cool to see what you could do. I think that would be pretty cool. No.
So far it's out within landscapes. No.
I'm sticking to the outside, BT. I'm sticking to the outside. When did this whole thing, begin for you? How old a guy were you when you got into maybe just the electrical part of the landscape world,
Yeah, my
or just the
background's-
electrical thing, and then moved into lighting?
My background's in electrical. And while I was going to school, I was wiring houses and doing electrical, and then we started a lighting division from that, or with the owner of the electrical company. And
So
then-
you were working for somebody, a businessman,
Yep.
a business person
Yep.
who had their electrical company.
So we
Okay.
started a lighting division with that company, and shortly after, I was there for about 5 years, and kind of went through growing pains and learned a lot and figured out what worked and didn't work. Then I felt safe to go out on my own.
Yeah. And so you did. You made the leap.
Yeah.
And did you make the leap then directly into a lighting thing specifically?
Yep, for sure. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and now we actually just completed. I bought a building about a year ago. I started out working out of my home, and then I took over all the extra space in our house and detached garage, and then I moved. My 2 kids came along and would kick me out of the house. I had an office down the street. But the last year we put together. We've got an office and a warehouse and a showroom, and it's a great place to meet architects and look over blueprints.
Sure.
And look at pictures, and it's great. It's wonderful, super organized, and
Again, that calls to light a no pun intended, a point about the front end of design.
Yeah.
How important it is in landscape architecture when we're looking at these possible plans, that they include the factor of the lighting, the water, all the different components.
Sure.
And we talk about those things right up front and get a sense from the client what is important to them and what do they want to see. Because we think the landscape, why we use lighting is because the landscape doesn't stop at sunset. In many cases, a whole different dimension of it begins at sunset. Mm-hmm. And what Scott does so well, and one of the things that we like about what we get in a product, is that the lighting is best served when you really don't know where it's coming from, but you see the result of it. And so the sources of where it comes from are the way it's done and engineered, and that's the science part. But the art part says we need this water feature illuminated, but we don't need it screaming at us like it's on,
Again,
Fifth Avenue.
This is a total theatrical
Yep.
way of thinking. It's total theater is what
Because
you guys
it's
are
emotive.
talking about here, right?
It's another component of the emotive landscape.
Exactly. And if you see the source, or it's the same thing in movies, if you see the special effect, it's no longer special. You're seeing what the effect is. And lighting's the same way. If you see that source, or if it's too glaring, or if it's too obvious and it's not emotional, it becomes intellectual, then it's lost its impact.
And Scott will explain, I think you should go into this a little bit about how it's easy to make mistakes about lighting if you don't have all the facts in the room when it comes to the different types of lighting, and what is it that you're working on highlighting in the landscape and what you should be using. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that are still on the learning curve or feel that I really don't need lighting. I find it like it's excessive. But for every person that we've done it for, if they had that attitude in the beginning, they've certainly changed their tune.
Just like the lady today. She's like, I don't want this lit up too much. I don't. There's a guy that came in that was had way too many lights. It's all about lighting intensity, and again about filters and about glare shields and not seeing the light source, and just having, you shouldn't be walking through a landscape during the daytime and seeing all, like, boy, you have a lot of landscape lights. Like they should really blend in.
Exactly.
And if you do have path lights or really functional lighting that on steps and things that need to be close that you do see, they should complement the house or the landscape or the colors
plants
or the
there,
plants,
or
and you can do some decorative ones. For the most part, I like the path lights to be functional and try not to, in most landscapes, not to draw any attention to themselves. Like, they just come alive at night. Don't see any hot spots. If there's, sometimes I go to a job and people are like, oh, I don't like the lights in the trees. Those are, they're really glaring, and but that's when they're done wrong. Like, if
Yes.
there's so many examples of bad lighting around the city that I feel like it done right, moonlighting is spectacular. You get the shadows and
I think it would be helpful to explain to our listening audience those two terms. The one would be the moonlighting, but also hot spots. What creates a hot spot, and what's it look like?
So moonlighting is when you put a light up in the tree. We get up in the tree
I love
30
those.
to 40 feet, and it's important to get them away from a branch so they're not hitting a branch immediately, creating a hot spot on the tree itself. But it's fun to filter through some of the branches, and I usually like to balance that with an uplight. So if you uplight the tree and downlight the tree, it's a really natural look, and it's great.
As though the moon were glowing through the branches coming down. But I can see what you say. If it casts up against a pretty sizable branch, it's going to be too much intensity from that light on the branch, and there's your hot spot. There's that glaring, unnatural
Yep, and
look.
same thing, uplight. Yeah, if we're downlighting, if you hit a branch too soon, it's
you
too
go, same
hot.
thing there,
Or
yeah.
if you're uplighting the tree, some people put them really close to the trunk of the tree, so the trunk, you burn in the trunk, and that's a hot spot. So there's, depending on the type of tree that you're lighting and the size of the canopy, that determines how many fixtures for one, and two, how far away from the trunk you mount them.
And then you want it to look good when there's no leaves on it too. Obviously, in
Right.
the wintertime, you've got to factor that in.
in winter,
Maybe even more so.
I get more compliments in the winter almost than I do in the summer, because it's dark at 5 o'clock. People come home to a dark house and landscape.
That's
It's
right.
depressing, and that's when it's important to more view, like, from your kitchen window or from the living room. Like, what do you see looking out of your house? It extends that inside room. So instead of looking at a black window, your whole house is extended into another living area.
Yeah, with the lighting alone.
With the lighting.
Yeah, and the landscaping. Maybe the lady in Plymouth that you're working with, 12 lights. That's what you set up, and then, like you said, you'll likely be back to add more because she likes what she sees. But Bob, you brought it up, and so did you, Scott. That there's a lot of examples of bad lighting, and maybe so many clients or potential clients have seen so much bad lighting in landscapes that's why
They think that's what they'll end up with.
That's what it is, right?
Well,
right.
and she kept going back to these solar lights, like, they just don't last. If I could just get, I'm like, okay, if you think that looks good, I mean, that little beacon of a bad light, because it's really, there's a little pool of light with the little plastic solar ones.
Yeah.
A good path light that's standing up a couple feet and basically lighting the landscape, and not just showing itself, or not just some
Showing
sort of a
itself.
beacon. Yeah,
The little stand.
it'll be fun.
It used to, I would imagine, be a sort of an expensive proposition, but I got to think the technologies that we're seeing everywhere when it comes to quote-unquote lighting in general are being applied to outdoor lighting too. So the LEDs and the LCDs and all of that stuff has got to be something that's really changing the scope of how you can light, but also the affordability for a lot of folks. Not to say that it was excessively expensive before, but what I'm saying is just more affordable than before.
Well, the issue right now is it's almost the same. Like, actually, LED is still a little bit more expensive, but basically by LED, you're able to put a 3-watt bulb is typically equivalent to a 20-watt halogen.
Okay.
So what used to be able to, like, a transformer that runs the lighting system, like a 900-watt transformer, now can be replaced with a 300-watt. And if you had to run, say, 1,000 feet of wire on a job, now it's maybe 300 feet. So you're using less product, you're using smaller transformers, less wire. You don't get the voltage drop. So if there's 5 fixed, basically you don't have all the wattage adding up. So instead of 100 watts, something's 15 watts.
Yep, okay.
So you use a smaller run of wire, you use less wire, smaller transformer. So therefore, the product cost in that is less, but the bulbs right now are more. To get a good LED bulb that has good color, has good, the color temperature is good.
That you want,
so
yeah.
the lumen output and the Kelvin temp is and you really can customize a job a lot better with LED. They're way more versatile than a halogen. There's beam spreads and color temps you can really do a great job.
Well, and you could probably comment a little bit more on the efficiency of using the LED and not just from the output,
But replacement efficiencies,
yes,
that sort of thing,
yep.
right?
especially if they're up in trees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So they last. Most of the two brands that I'm working with right now, which are the leading manufacturers out there, they have a 5-year warranty, but they're rated to last close to 15 years.
Wow.
So they're a little more
Wow.
expensive up front, but in the long run, you're going to get your money back and then some, and then factor in the electrical costs.
Oh, I got halogen lights mostly in my backyard landscape, and those are expensive. So it's a little bump up, but they don't last a season or two.
Yeah.
I mean, they just burn out
And I have
fast, and they burn
customers-
hot too.
They have us come out every year and change every bulb, and then some people are on like the 2-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones where if they have one light out, they call you and they notice, and they appreciate their landscape and their lighting, like they enjoy it. Like they're out every night looking at their landscape,
Yeah.
whether it's drinking wine on the deck or screen porch or whatever. And, a service call and change a bulb, they're like, a couple of those a summer, it's like just change them once in the spring and we don't have to call you. We don't have to deal with the service charges.
just do them all.
Just
Yeah.
do them all.
Mhm.
But now with LED, I still want to come out every year and clean and straighten and adjust to make sure all the wires, has stayed buried, and if there's lighting going up a tree, that, that's another thing I like to check on every year is making sure that the trees aren't growing too big to get, swallow up
And
the wire.
we should talk a little bit about, as we do with the plant material, what some of those varmints can do to our lighting projects.
sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're doing to work with that challenge?
Typically we find if we're running wire under decks, it's a great place for varmints. We run anything under decks and conduit, like if it's like or up the trees for the most part, we have no problems with that. You just learn not to run the wire in the saddles or like the crotches of the trees. You run around the side because squirrels will sit there and they'll chew your wire. But if you run them on the sides of the branches and not go,
They just
through
want to
the
climb up and
saddles.
down that and get to where their sitting spot is. They can't.
So they'll be
hang
sitting there eating
and
an
chew.
acorn or
Yeah.
something, and like, oh, there's some wire here, so they start chewing on
Right.
that. But
If it's in the saddle,
you
Yeah.
learn that. That's
Yeah.
the only time that'll get chewed.
Okay.
And then anytime coming out of transformers, we run conduit down and try not to leave any open holes in the transformers because bees will get in there. There's been more
sure.
and more bees the last few years. We run across them all the time.
That's a surprise. Opening up that panel. Hello.
Yeah, transformers or the ground bees we walk in. And I mean, the last 2 years have been, and we've had twice as many encounters than the 15 before. So for some reason.
So you do have to take into account that caution and
Yeah.
and the conduit and other things, and placement
Yep.
makes it all a reality.
Yeah, but typically, nowadays we really don't have because we know what to look out for, we really don't have a whole lot of issues with critters, I guess.
Yeah.
Why don't you also talk a little bit about some of the features that now having outdoor lighting affords the homeowner in terms of convenience, operation, that kind of thing? There's a lot of things going on there in the technology world that people don't even know about like if they're just starting out with solar lights.
And here's what I want to say, because I want to give you a little visual on what Bob was just saying. While he was saying it, he was doing like a little remote thing with his hand and his thumb, and so I can see. Yeah,
Sure.
now I see what
We
you're
do
getting
it with
at.
so many other things. We're
Sure.
dealing with sound in the
Yeah,
landscape.
absolutely.
and,
You can put an app on your phone and you can control
cool.
whatever zone in your house. You can have the front yard, the backyard, the pool area. We just we do lighting in Arizona in the wintertime, and we just finished a really big project on our way back. And the guy, he wanted everything on all night, but his pool lights he wanted to be able to turn off because that was right outside his master bedroom. So we ended up, it snowballed from there. So we were able to put like all his coach lights on his house. We had, by changing out existing internal switches in the house, we created a more of a lighting control system. So it was more than just the landscape. We were, the service light on the side of the house, the garage lights, the coach lights, front and backyard. We had different things turning on at different times, and some stuff he had turned off at 10 o'clock. Some stuff turned off at midnight. Landscape lights, he wanted most of them on all night long, and then the pool lights, he has an app on his phone that he shuts them off when he goes to bed.
That's nice. Now, are these controllers things that just interface with current existing transformers and such, so you can sort of retrofit them if you've already got an existing thing in place or whatever?
You can have little appliance modules, like little plug-in modules that you plug into an outlet, and then you can plug the lamp into them more or less, so you can control that, and that can just run with a program. So you give it a house code and a number, and it's actually an app it's a software on your computer. So I can. Every house that we do, and I've done a few of these, probably maybe 10 or 12 of these systems now, and I've got a few in the works right now in Minnesota. But I just do the customer's name, and I have all the modules they have. Some customers have 3 modules, and some there's 25.
Yeah.
And then if anything ever goes bad, so if there's a transformer in the backyard that is out, if that module is bad, I can program it from my computer before I go out there and program the new module, go out there and just swap it out.
That's cool.
So if something
and you
doesn't
see
turn
it,
on,
you're able to do that service call, so to speak, in advance of the service call on site. That's pretty nice.
And it's only getting. That's pretty cool right now, but it's every single year. There's more.
Yeah,
there's cooler stuff coming out.
Yeah, more whiz bang stuff. I just love the phone app thing. That alone is pretty cool. It used to be just a simple timer. That's all you could have on that transformer.
Analog timer.
Or something built in electronically timed, in the transformer.
And actually, in addition to what we were just talking about, astronomical timer, basically you set the date, time, and longitude, and all the lighting turns on at dusk and different set times.
Sure.
So it knows when the sun sets every single day. It changes for daylight savings.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
So everything turns on at dusk. It doesn't turn on an hour before. You're not constantly changing it. And that's been out for a while, but just in the last few years, it's got to the point where it was affordable. Before that technology, it was $450 for one box that was hardwired, and now you can get these little plug-in timers for $40-$50.
Nice. and then so they'll do that, and then they'll shut off at 12:30, and then because you're in bed and whatever, or it'll shut off all the zones except maybe one or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So right now, that's every system we have for the most part has an astronomical time clock in it. So every transformer turns on at dusk and shuts off at midnight.
You mentioned Arizona. Now you do mostly work here in Minnesota. I imagine Wisconsin as well. But do you have a place in Arizona, or do you just find a lot of clients that are snowbirds from Minnesota that you go down there and do work for them because you met them in this upper Midwest, Wisconsin and Minnesota zone?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yep. And networking down there is great. We have a lot of our customers pretty much go 50-50 with Florida or Arizona.
Okay. So you got the Florida factor too, yeah.
Well, we don't go there,
okay.
But there's a lot of lighting in Florida, but when we started doing it in Arizona 10 years ago, there was like nobody. There was landscape. Everybody could do it. Nobody
really.
There wasn't a niche. Nobody really specialized, and it was everybody had bad lighting, and pretty much I still come across that we can go there and just make it so much better. We can deal with our existing systems and product and just make it better. But it's customers from here, from Minnesota, we just network with them. And it's all about entertaining and having fun there. So every night they're out on their patio, whether it's theirs or their friends or neighbors, or they're golfing, and it's easy to get referrals down there.
Well, I know it's this way with Bob and Edelweiss Design and clients that he's had over the years. You develop a relationship with these folks. And because what you're working on in their world is so much a hospitable environment, it's a living space, it's an entertaining space, that sort of vibe carries through then to the relationship that they have with a Bob and with a Scott. And so do you find that you're going down to Arizona, you met the client up north here, and they're like, Scott, come on in. First off, before we get started, do you like Pinot Grigio or Cabernet Sauvignon? Are you light or are you red? What do you want? What do you want? So and then it begins that way probably more often than not, doesn't it?
And they take you golfing and dinners, and we'd actually hang out with customers a lot. They overlap customers, friends. It's
cool.
Kind of weird. It's like do you introduce somebody as your customer, or your friends, it's good.
That's really nice. That's very sweet.
And it's fun.
But you've had some far-flung assignments then, other than Arizona, perhaps. Other places, because you'll go anywhere. I imagine if you got a good job. Have you had Have you had some far-flung assignments along the way?
We've done a couple great projects. One really nice project in Hawaii. We did that 7-8 years ago, and then pretty much go back every year for a week and service their lighting.
Oh,
and
gee,
change all
that's
the
that's
bulbs.
week.
awful.
Oh, that sounds highly
That's
inefficient.
terrible.
So that's good.
So that is probably the most far flung
We went
location
to
for
Cabo this year, and
Okay.
we've got a big project going
you.
there
And a
next
project
year.
there. Okay.
So we looked at it this year and designed it, and now they're
Yeah.
back here. So he said I'll be going back in December, and he can take whatever product I have with him, and so that's good.
Are most of these homes, or do you do commercial lighting projects too for commercial clients?
Most of them are homes,
Okay.
but we do a lot of some commercial stuff. We do
Yeah.
restaurants, like we did the new Cove in Wayzata. We do everything at Fletcher's. There's a new restaurant in Woodbury we're doing. Chianti Grill down in Bloomington. And we probably did 5 or 6 restaurants
Okay.
last year alone, and some hotels and stuff. But most of the stuff, it's just we do their home first, and then
Okay. And then-
overlaps to their
There
business.
There you go. Taking into account, I'm sure you've done some sizable home jobs, and again, you've done some commercial jobs. What's the most intricate project that you've had? With bells, whistles, a lot of different lights, zones, timers, iPhone, remote, whatever. Just intricate, just cool, and a lot of different things to explore visually in regard to the kind of lights that you install.
We're working on a pretty incredible house right now.
Right now?
in
Oh,
Edina.
cool.
It's not done yet. It's been going for the last year or two. Yeah.
I
So
know
that's
it.
there.
So this is this is intricate, yeah. So what makes it so intricate?
Well, the landscape is incredible. So there's we're doing everything in one. Yeah, we're doing everything in one. Lots of cut in step lights, and working with the paver guy, the stone guys, putting step lights in the face of the steps. So like louvered lights lighting the steps. We have underwater lights. We have moon lights. We have in ground, so flush mounted lights you can walk on and mow on, and you really don't even know they're there
Yeah. until they light up. And then you don't know they're there.
Yep.
Because you don't want to know they're there.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Like
so
we
everything.
talked about.
There's really 10 lights on that job that you're going to see, and it's 8 acres. So there's 10 path lights that are nice.
I gotcha.
like
that you'll see.
substantial,
That you're intended to see.
You're intended to see. Everything else is buried in the landscape or trees
Yeah,
that are
that's
flush
cool.
mounted or in the stone.
What do you think the light count will be when all is said and done? Actual individual lights.
I haven't even added it up. Actually, it's still going. So every time I go, there were probably 200-300.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So
And with a lot of the newer technologies, the
yeah, for sure.
LED
Everything's
and
LED and
remoted and all that kind of stuff.
we have
Mhm.
some lights are equivalent to lighting some big oak trees. It's a 20-watt LED, but it's putting out the lumens of close to like 150-watt floodlight.
Okay.
So pretty neat. And then I have another great job that we just added on, that every single year there's a guy in Minnetonka, Deep Haven area, and he's a retired lawyer, and he sits out in his screen porch, and now he just took out his pool because nobody used it, and put a basically like an entertaining or big patio with some water features and kind of a cooking trellis area, screened area. But he has everything going there. There's colored tulips. We've got globe lights hanging in the trees. There's probably 300, 200 lights in his yard, but it's done in layers that if you go there, it doesn't seem like there's so many lights. And there's a lot of different fun things going on, like different moon lights. Yes, deck lights. There's a new LED under tape light now that's super thin. It's probably not even a quarter-inch thick or quarter-inch, and it comes in reels of 84 feet,
my
and you can
God.
cut it anywhere you want. So he has these new sitting walls. And again, just because there's such a variety of lighting there, that it looked really neat to just do some of these sitting walls in this tape light, and then that just washes down. So if you're sitting on a 2-foot cap or 20-inch cap, it washes down the face of the stone, and then that kicks off and lights the patio.
That's nice. I like that.
So that's really fun, and then it goes in channels, so you don't see the light source at all. You just get the effect. So that's an ongoing fun project, and they love their lights and appreciate it. And everything we do, I get a phone call and tell them how great it looks and how much.
Like the lady in Plymouth with the retired lawyer, did it start off with maybe 12 or 20 lights or something, and then it just every year
he adds a little bit. Every single year he adds some.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because he appreciates it. He gets it.
They love it.
Yeah, he gets it.
Yeah.
It's an art in and of itself. And there's composition. And there's texture.
And he's the guy, if one bulb burns out, he's going to call you and like, oh, Scott, remember that light next to the tree in the ground?
Yeah. I'm gonna
of course I do. I think of it all the time.
Yeah. And by the way, when you head out to Hawaii to take care of my place there, that Hawaii, now that sounds like great duty.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
I think we need to do a podcast.
I
from that
think
home
we
in
need
Hawaii.
to. Great minds, they think alike.
I like
yes,
that.
they do. What a pleasure to have you here, Scott. Some good stories, and God, we wish you all the best success. This is a wonderful facet to the gardening and landscaping world that I think a lot of folks neglect to really factor in. And it's the icing on the cake. It really, really is. In some ways, it can be the cake in and of itself, because you can really create some unique visual aspects to even a garden and a landscape that doesn't have a lot of substantial action in it. You can create it and make it larger than life because of the lighting.
Yep.
And so props to you, my friend, and great success as the future unfolds.
Thank you.
Really fun
Very
stuff. Take a look at some of these pictures. They're phenomenal. The work is great. EricksonLighting.com is the website. Erickson Outdoor Lighting is the company, and Scott Erickson's the proprietor there. Any parting shots there, my dear Bob Harvey?
No, just excited about some other topics that will be coming up the next few weeks when we talk about how, when we're out in our outdoor landscape, how we enjoy it from a food category.
Nice.
Preparation, whether it be a grill or fireplace or pizza oven, and we're going to be talking to some folks that specialize in that, and I know you have a special interest in that.
I sure do
BT,
love
because of your own podcast with Friday Foodie Show,
Yep.
and looking forward to the opportunity of melding these interests and recreational activities together.
Let's do this too. In addition to food in the landscape on a show or shows ahead, let's do a little follow up on the pond project in Afton, because I'd really like to get a little update on that. How many shows back? It was Adam and Josh that joined us from your crew from Edelweiss Design, and it's just this amazing, very natural-oriented pond. How many gallons? 150
About
some thousand.
150,000
Just
gallon pond.
and it was all meant to be, a replication of nature rather than something that, oh, look, there is a pond, and the project
Looks like
is super
it's always
cool.
been there.
And so let's do a little follow up on that in the days ahead.
I will add one little thing quickly, talking about the different levels that we interact with our clients. And
Yeah.
you were talking about it, Scott, with some of yours and the golfing and everything. We both clients are avid gardeners and love it, and so they met with me over at the garden center on Friday, and we had our list and from the design and everything, and we got to shop with our clients. They love that.
Nice.
And then you get to educate them about why choose this, why not choose this, or I can see this. And it's just a wonderful, they just get so excited, that they are playing a role because they
active
choose
role.
to be.
Yeah.
They choose to be. And so it's nice to be able to add that component to the design completion
Absolutely.
process.
And that's very hands-on at that point, obviously. If you've got any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach Bob Harvey, info@edelweissdesign.com. You can reach yours truly, Brian Turner, BT, at this email address, btvoice, BEETEA, voice @gmail.com. Among the topics that we will cover also coming up, Deanna from Burnsville emailed me, and she wants to do a rain garden near the curbside of her house. And so I think we should expand a little bit on the kind of requests you might be getting from clients in regard to rain gardens, helping to recharge the aquifers in whatever small or large way that we're able to do as homeowners in more suburban or urban settings, or even maybe more importantly in those larger settings. And then and maybe we can get into a little bit about what we're seeing from even the highway department, road building perspective, and development perspective, because we're seeing those aquifer rechargers built into pretty much every commercial and transit landscape that's out there, whether it's the middle of clover leaves or the sides of roads. That aquifer recharging is a big part of what we're seeing here in Minnesota, so we'll cover that as well. My name is Brian Turner.
Bob Harvey from Edelweiss Design, and that's with an E, not an A.
There you go. EDELWEISS Design, EdelweissDesign.com. Scott Erickson, thanks again, my friend.
Thank you.
It's the Landscape and Garden Show with Bob and BT. We'll see you next week.